This is a 5-layer floor system. The first layer is truck bed liner. So months ago, I had cleaned out the van floor and applied truck bed liner. It's had plenty of time to off gas and cure and get ready. The next layer is 3/8 inch Minicell foam. It's L200 closed cell foam, and that goes in between all of the ridges, so it fills that gap. On top of that, we have cork underlayment, which is typically used for home flooring applications to go under floor. It helps with noise mitigation, which is one of the main things we want to use it for here. The next layer, you can start seeing the layers now, is XPS foam. This foam has an R value of 5 and a PSI of 25, so 25 pounds per square inch for compressive strength means it's extremely strong and durable. The next layer is 3/4 inch plywood. It's a maple hardwood that has 9 layers, extremely strong. And on top of that, we have a G Floor brand vinyl floor, which is marine grade, and I'll go over that in more detail later in the video. Let's talk about requirements for the van floor. Number 1, insulation. Number 2, sound mitigation for a quiet ride. Number 3, it has to be a solid and strong floor. So based on those requirements, this is what I've come up with. The first layer is truck bed liner. Now the truck bed liner is something that I applied in the fall where the temperatures were higher, and it's been several months now, so all of the off-gassing and all of the curing has occurred, and off-gassing is a problem with this product. So if you're going to do this, make sure you leave plenty of time between this step and the next steps. Next we have the L200 Minicell foam. It is a closed cell foam, 3/8 inch thickness, and I cut it into strips and other shapes to fit various locations. And I filled as much of the gaps between the ridges as I possibly could. The next layer is cork underlayment. I know, I've not seen this in a van before either. I decided to put it in my van because of 2 things. One, I put the truck bed liner on, and when you do that, it's not smooth anymore. The truck bed liner has these little particles of rubber in it, so I didn't know if the XPS foam would sit on that perfectly flat and noise-free. So this is a little extra insurance for that, as well as it actually has an R value of 0.6, and it's excellent for noise reduction. So for all of those reasons, that's the next layer. Then on top of that, we have our 1-inch XPS foam. It is an R value of 5. It has a PSI of 25. That's 25 pounds per square inch of compression strength that it has. So it can quite literally lay flat across the van, and then when the plywood goes on top of that, it's solid. There's not going to be any sagging or instability in that floor at all. This is a product that typically goes underneath concrete slabs, and it's designed to be able to hold the weight and distribute that weight evenly. So when I'm talking about the cork and the XPS foam, those are actually glued together before they went into the van. And then the plywood goes down. This is a 3/4 inch maple hardwood. It has 9 plies, so it's extremely strong and durable and heavy. I got this at one of my local stores, Home Depot or Lowe's, and 3 sheets of 4-foot by 8-foot plywood was enough to do my floor. I had to do a little creative puzzling for that to work, but we made it work. And finally, the vinyl flooring goes in. This is a G Floor marine grade vinyl that's extremely tough and durable. And there were a lot of decisions that went into the selection of the flooring. Come on inside the van and let me show you something. Our vinyl floor selection process started many months ago. We had a lot of time, so we ordered a ton of samples of product. We ordered everything we thought we might want in the van. So one of the first ones I ordered was this nice pattern here. I thought that looks really nice. It's a great color, it's a great pattern. And I did my first test, which is a mud test. So I've got mud from the yard because we will get the floor muddy. It's just a fact of life. And so when you have ground in mud into a pattern like this, and then you try to clean it, it doesn't clean very well. So you can scrub it, you can put cleaners on there, and you can work at it pretty good to get it clean. So I thought, well, that's probably not ideal for us. Even now, I've got most of it off and there's still a little bit of a stain on here. So because it has such deep grooves in this pattern, I just can't do it. So we had several of those options that were that style and pattern, including this one, which I thought this was really nice. It's high quality, thick, cushiony, beautiful, but you can see my stain here. I have not been able to get that out. That's from the first mud test I did a long time ago. So I can't use it. We ordered marmoleum, we ordered other things. So these, great on mud, that comes right off. That's not going to stain at all. So then we moved into test number 2, scratch test. We're not the most careful people. We have dogs. We're in and out. Things will happen over time. So our dog's nails are sharp. I will have screws, nails, and other things going in and out of there. So just using a screw or whatever you have on hand that has a sharp point on it, you can just make some scratches. And that's not going to buff out. That's permanent. And I guarantee you we will have those on our floor if we installed this type of flooring. So ordered samples, and then finally found this product from G-Floor. This is a marine grade vinyl. It is also very strong and durable, long lasting. It's thick, it's heavy. And I went to do the scratch test on it. See any scratches? There are none. This is crazy durable. So it survived the scratch test. Obviously, it's going to survive the mud test. That comes right off with no problems. They say that now, isn't that funny? It's because that's a dry paper towel. So let me get the wet paper towel. Yeah, that comes right off. See, no worries. That'll wipe right up. There are 2 color options at the time of this video for the G-Floor vinyl. One is called Sand and one is called Castle. We chose Castle because it does have more of the gray tones in it, more gray earthy tones and less of the peachy sandy tones. So that's what we went with. I'm going to use the bed rug out of the van as the floor template, but before I do that, I need to use my router to cut these half lap joints into the plywood. The idea is the plywood needs to overlap before I put the template down so that the final measurements will be correct. I finished cutting all the half lap joints and put all the different pieces of plywood together with the bed rug on top, and I went ahead and traced out the template, even accounting for areas like this towards the back of the van where the bed rug doesn't go all the way to the wall. These are all of the pieces of plywood for the subfloor system. This is 3/4 inch hardwood maple in a 9-ply plywood. What we're doing today is adding another coat of Kills mold and mildew. So we'll put 2 or 3 coats of this on the bottom. Today is a day that we finally get started on our floor. Now I know that the weather doesn't look conducive to adhesive setting up, and that's true. But we do have a couple of strategies that we can use to hopefully mitigate any problems we might have with the cold temperatures. But first we have to get rid of this bed rug. You might notice that the floor of the van doesn't look like a stock van floor, and that's true. We did actually use the truck bed liner for the entire bed. One of the things I was concerned about is having moisture trapped underneath the floor system, and to mitigate the potential of rust and other issues, I just went ahead and put the truck bed liner down. And it actually worked quite well. This was one kit, 1 gallon of material, covered 2 coats on this 159 extended Ram ProMaster. So we were quite pleased with that. There was literally none left over. It barely made it, but still, one kit, complete coverage, peace of mind. You might also notice we have some white strips in here that are glued down. So the strategy here was to put down some additional support in areas that I thought might need it. So the entrance here, when you're stepping in and out, places where we have batteries, places where we have water tanks. So the material is actually just a PVC board. So again, no organic materials. It's just a PVC handy panel. And I got this at Lowe's, and I just cut it on the table saw to fit. I apologize for the lighting. We actually have to work over here near the garage so that we can put down some mats from the garage to the van, so as not to drag dirt and debris and other, well, snow and whatnot into the van. Allowed to be working in the sun, but this will keep the van clean. So next step is clean the floor. Want to make sure that there's absolutely nothing underneath the floor in terms of dirt, dust, debris, ice, snow, water, anything. It all has to go. The next layer is Minicell foam. This is a 3/8 inch closed cell foam. It's the L200 Minicell. And while this won't provide a lot of R value, it does provide a couple other things. One is some sound mitigation, and the other is filling the space. So I've gone back and forth so many times on leave the space open, fill the space, leave it open, fill the space. And here's my conclusion: fill the space. There's so many van builders out there, van builders I respect and watch a lot, who talk about this concept of airflow under the floor. I'm sorry, but show me the flow. There's no airflow happening underneath here. It's sealed on all sides. Where is the flow? There is none. So there's no flow. There's no protection against mold and mildew, period. All you did was trap air in those channels. So did the air you trap in those channels have moisture in it? So when we have temperature fluctuations, that moisture will become water and then evaporate and become water and evaporate and cause rust? I think it will. Now, maybe you get away with not ever having that problem. Great. But if you can reduce the risk of that happening, why would you not do that? And that's what kept me up at night or woke me up early in the mornings thinking about this stupid problem. Fill it or don't fill it. And at the end of the day, is there any harm in filling it? And the answer is no. Is there benefit in filling it? And the answer is maybe. So why not? It was relatively inexpensive, and it gives me a lot of peace of mind. So fill in the gaps. So this won't fill 100% of the gap, obviously, but it's going to fill 90, 95% of it. So if I can displace 90 to 95% of the air which contains moisture, then that means I've eliminated 90 to 95% of the potential for moisture under the floor. And that, I think, is worth it. I've cut all the pieces of Minicell foam and put them in their place. It's important to note that I have not glued down any of the Minicell foam. I'm not going to glue it down. I'm literally just going to leave it sitting in here. So I'm going to have to let it sit for a few days so that it'll lay flat and not cause any problems. I put in the first section of XPS foam. This is our insulation. It's 1 inch thick, has an R value of 5 and a PSI of 25. So that means it has a very strong resistance to compression. And on the bottom of this, what you don't see is the cork underlayment that I attached. You can see it on the next section here. So that's why I want to show you this before I install this piece here. You can see I've also cut this channel here. The channel is intended to go over top of the battery cable for the EcoFlow power system. This doesn't quite fit down into the groove. It comes up a little bit over top of these ridges. So because of that, I had to cut a bit of a groove here. Here's a closer look at that battery cable running underneath the floor. And now I'm going to go ahead and put the next section in. And it lays flat. Great. And now I've used a tuck tape and sealed up all of the seams. Hey look, I found another use for the bed rug. This helps keep the van clean as I go from the garage to the van across winter in Ohio. I also want to point out that I'm staggering my seams. And what does that mean? That means that the XPS foam has a seam approximately here, about 2 feet in. Half of this plywood sheet, which is about 4 feet across. So that means that its seam for the XPS then comes to here, and my next sheet of plywood will cover across that seam and go into this area back here. Why do I not want to have a seam stacked on top of a seam like this, and instead mine are like this? Well, that just adds to the stability and strength of the floor. If you have a seam on top of a seam here, for instance, and then you put a lot of weight here, you could end up having your floor do something like this. As far as I'm concerned, it's just one more of those extra steps you can take to make sure your floor is as solid and as strong as possible. And that little extra planning it takes to do this, well worth it. Also put plywood and this PVC board and anything I could find really along the path here so that this doesn't gouge or ruin the XPS foam as I get it from here up to where it needs to go. This is pretty heavy. It's a 4x8 sheet of this 3/4 inch maple plywood is almost 90 pounds. So even though this one's cut down, it's still about all I can do to manage it. I stopped a little short on this. I have a gap of about that much, which is just enough for the half flap joint. So I can get in here with the adhesive and fill that joint with the adhesive and prepare for the screws to hold it in place while the adhesive sets up. So our height today is going to be about 35 degrees Fahrenheit. And I mentioned earlier in the video, we have some strategies for the adhesives to set up properly. And this is strategy number 1. This is LePage PL Max. Now this will set up in temperatures as low as -12 Fahrenheit. Shout out to Jeff of Dares Drives for finding and testing this. He actually went through dozens of tests with a lot of different adhesives and found this one to be truly the best of the best. He glued pieces together and put them in the oven, the freezer, the oven, the freezer, the oven, the freezer. This is the only one after all of that did not fail. The actual lamination of the plywood failed before the adhesive did. So again, thank you. So I pulled everything together for gluing down the floor. You can see I've got my 100-pound roller, my adhesive, and I've got a bunch of tools set up and staged and ready to go. I'm going to do something I rarely ever do. I am going to follow the directions on this adhesive to the letter. This is the G-Floor Marine and Outdoor Adhesive, and it has very specific instructions on how to not only apply it, but then what to do afterwards. I did the front section here the same as I did the back section. I just troweled out a little bit of adhesive, maybe about 2 feet at a time, and then after 5 to 10 minutes I would roll the floor onto that. Those are the instructions for that specific adhesive. Well, let me back up. The instructions were not to let it sit for more than 5 to 10 minutes. So my method was to just do a section at a time and just roll the floor down onto it after the time expired. Okay. The next step is wait 1 hour, which we did, and then use a heavy roller. And this is a 100-pound roller that I rented from Home Depot. It's $25 for 24 hours. So there's no excuse not to have one of these. It's also, this flooring is not a lightweight vinyl flooring. It's very heavy and very difficult to work with. So I knew that the scooting around on the floor in my socks was not going to do it here. So need to do it right, and that's what we're doing. I have a Ram ProMaster 159 extended wheelbase. So if you're doing a floor like this and using this type of adhesive or similar, you could get away with using 1 gallon. I actually have just the smallest amount of adhesive left in here, and I was quite liberal. I made sure every square millimeter was covered with adhesive, lobbed some over the sides here and there, and still had a little bit left in the bottom. So in case you're wondering, 1 gallon will suffice. Okay, the rolling of the floor is complete. Now we're going to move on to the final phase, which is Operation Stay Warm. So the temperature right now outside is about 52 and dropping. We're getting into the evening, and overnight it should get down to 38 degrees, and we need to keep this floor at 50 or above for at least 24 hours. So what I've done over the past week is some tests. I've tested with this heater and this heater, one being a oil heater and one forced air, and then also a fan to circulate it. So the test was during a 20-degree Fahrenheit night, overnight, I was able to maintain the temperature in the van at about 42 degrees. So we'll call it 20. So I'm able to get a 20-degree increase in temperature with just these 2 heaters and the fan to circulate it. So I had also left the bed in. The bed has a 6-inch mattress. You know, I don't know what the R value of that could be, but it's something. And I also closed off the cab using some moving blankets. So if I was able to have a 20-degree temperature increase before the floor went in, now that I have an insulated floor, I'm pretty confident that I will achieve at least 20 degrees. And so tonight, again, 38 degrees, add 20, 58. So all night long, we should have about 58 to maybe even 60 degrees in here. So that's the plan, and I will come out periodically to check and make sure. Okay, I've got these all running now. I'm gonna start shutting the doors. And by the way, the temperature is dropping, so time is of the essence. I'm gonna put this on the floor so that when I come in to check on it in the evening, I have a very good representation for the temperature at the floor, not up here on the wall. And for the trim, I'm going to cover this part here first with a piece of flat aluminum stock. I just picked these up at the local Lowe's. This is a 1.5 inch, but I'm going to use a 2-inch wide piece of stock because that will allow me to actually attach it to the plywood, and then that'll go here. And then I just have stair edging that I also bought at Lowe's to go over the top of that, kind of like this. So I had the 2-inch aluminum cut to size, and I also drilled these holes so I could put the screws in there, right there. And if I put the screws in at that point, it'll go right into the 3/4 inch plywood, no problem. And these are just standard deck screws that'll hold really well into the plywood. And I'll cover that up with the stair rail so you won't be able to see them. And here's the finished product. Got the stair rail in. I just used the standard little nails that came with that, and I think it turned out really nice. All right, well, that just about wraps up the floor video, but before we go, I want to show you just a couple more things. First, I do have bolts in multiple locations, approximately 6 of them in the floor. These are grade 8 bolts. They're about 3 inches, maybe 3¼ inches long. So they go through the floor system, through the bottom of the van, and I have plenty of space down there for the washers, lock washer, and bolt. And of course, I put thread locker on everything. So those grade 8 bolts in multiple locations is what holds the floor to the van. Remember, I didn't glue anything down. It's completely floating, if you will, and that's just in case someday in the future we want to redo the van, or somebody wants to redo the van. It will come out a lot easier than if I had a whole bunch of glue and other things down here. That would have made your lives miserable, and I mean, it could be me. Okay, and one final thing. I intentionally left a 3/4 inch, and sometimes more, gap around the entire perimeter of the floor because the plywood is wood. It will expand and contract. Even though I've sealed it all the way around, it will expand and contract. So if it expands, it may buckle. So I left the gap, and I filled that gap with a special spray foam. This spray foam is meant for doors and windows, and it does not harden completely. It remains flexible to allow for that expansion and contraction. So let me have you take a look at this here. So you see this foam, this has been in here for probably 3 weeks at this point. Watch. Remains flexible. So I put that around everywhere. Okay. Thanks for joining us for this episode, and I'll see you next time.